Summer Solstice Indigenous Festival Virtual Edition. Featuring interactive cooking demonstrations, live and streaming concerts showcasing some of Canada's best Indigenous talent. Plus a virtual marketplace, online arts and crafts demonstrations, social distancing powwow, and much more. Summer Solstice Indigenous Festival Virtual Edition, June 1st to 21st. Full schedule and details at summersolsticefestivals.ca.
Aneen, my name is Sarain Fox, and I'm about to meet with Jaime and we're gonna go on an Indigenous walk. So, what's up, Summer Solstice Powwow? It's amazing to have you guys live with us. So, let's go on an Indigenous walking tour. Hey, Jaime.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Good. Hey, everybody. My name's Jaime Morse, and I'm the owner and the operator of Indigenous Walks. So happy to see you, Sarain.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah.
It's awesome also to go on a walking tour. Like, this is one thing that can still happen here, and we can still share with everyone.
Yeah, I was a little bit worried about how we were going to do walking tours, but I like the idea of having a virtual tour because I think it actually reaches more people than I could if I was, giving walking tours. So we can start here, and this is a beautiful monument that is for commemorating unceded Algonquin territory. So there's a little plaque here, and the artwork on the plaque is done by Dean Ottawa. He's from Kittigan-Zibi, and this was put up, the rock, I remember, in 2017. I was literally getting off the bus and I heard drumming, and I just thought, wow, what is this heaven I'm listening to? And I looked over the bridge and I saw the drum all set up, and they had very proudly unveiled this monument because they wanted to make sure that people know that this is unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. And so it's a very special rock that comes from their community, and it's supposed to be kind of like the city acknowledging and honoring.
Yeah, 2017.
That's it.
Awesome.
Well, it's supposed to be, it's a good point because it's supposed to be honoring territory, Indigenous territory, period.
Mm-hmm.
But only a few weeks later, there's another monument that got put up, and I just thought that, first of all, this one was put here, and then a few months later you have this giant 2017 Ottawa monument made out of concrete and steel, and actually fire can come out the top. And so it's this really big, showy 150 years of Canada right beside a very nice, calm, Indigenous landmarker. So I find these two very interesting, and it really goes to show that people need to have Indigenous advisors on any kind of committee, because you look at the distance between the two and the timing, and it's just kind of colonialism all over again.
Yeah. And people like to say that those things are not done on purpose, but I think everything needs to be put into consideration, and we need to think about our actions, and if we're going to honor someone, we need to protect what that means to the people.
Actually, and speaking of protection, that was a really good word to bring up, because it reminds me of all the festivals that happen here, and all of the food vendors that come up. And a couple of times I've come here, and right beside this monument, not this one, is a lineup of garbage, bins and recycle bins. One time it got backed into, and so part of my work as running Indigenous walks is to sort of like be aware of these things, and tell the city, like, this needs to be protected, and there has never been anything around there since. In fact, when they have festivals, they do actually put a barrier up.
Yeah.
And that was like some of the work we did, just like writing notes.
And just like taking notice, right? Like paying attention.
Just noticing, yeah. And like, how many people would notice this, if it wasn't pointed out to them? I'm sure some do, but like, how many people really let that sit with them?
Also the scale of this.
Like, we are taller than the landmarker, but you need like 4 people to, to just get the height.
All right, so where are we off to next?
So next we're going to go to the Aboriginal War Veterans Monument, and over there is where I kind of like to tell folks about the history of Indigenous participation as warriors, Indigenous participation as protecting the earth, protecting the land. And I think it's a good history where we can really see the mistreatment of Indigenous people by the Canadian government. And it was a time where Canadians were seeing that Indigenous people were contributing. Oh, look at this cameraman shoe!
You lost the shoe! This is live action here.
So actually the next stop that we're going to go to is the Aboriginal Veterans Monument. And it's a good place to go because the monument really exemplifies the participation of First Nations, Métis and Inuit. And it also kind of raised the consciousness of Canadians who noticed that Indigenous people were getting treated differently by the Canadian government. It wasn't until Canadians noticed and said, hey, you know, what's going on? Why are First Nations, you know, going to fight in the war just like everybody else, but when they come back, they get, you know, thrown back and forth in interjurisdictional loopholes, and they never get their benefits as veterans.
Yeah.
You know, so people were like, that doesn't make sense. You know, they fought hard. And because a lot of veterans didn't get their benefits, you know, they didn't get that leg up that other veterans got in Canada. And so a lot of Indigenous people fell through the cracks. That's when you started seeing a huge influx of people coming from their communities into the urban centers, or coming back from the war and not being able to go, feeling comfortable going back or allowed because they gave up their status. You know, so there's a lot of history just by having this monument there. So I think that when we go there, we're going to really see how we honor veterans.
Right.
And we've got to walk a little bit quickly.
Okay, we gotta go across that. Also, I think it's so interesting, right? Like, you think about the way that we honor veterans, like at gatherings, at powwows. It's a big deal. We make space for that, and it's such a big deal in our communities. Yeah, I just think it's interesting. There's all kinds of reasons why. There's all kinds of reasons why Indigenous veterans could be lackluster about being proud. And instead, it's quite the opposite.
It's true, yeah, because we see them as, like, as far as I know and understand from many different Indigenous communities, we see them as protectors, you know, not just warriors. Yeah. And a lot of people have this idea of a warrior, you know, that has some kind of a weapon. But one of the tools that we're actually going to see at this monument is First Nations man who's holding a peace pipe. That's the tool, you know, and I don't want to call it a weapon because the other ones are, that are being held by Inuk, First Nations woman on the other side, and a Métis person. So all of those symbols kind of connecting an idea of all Indigenous people in the service. This particular monument was created in 2001, and this was unveiled by the Governor General Adrian Clarkson, actually, yeah. So, and I remember that because I was like working with the youth council. So this is why a lot of these are like, I'm connected to these personally. I've been in Ottawa for 20 years, and this is not my territory, and trying to figure out how I can still feel connected to the land, and also honor Algonquin people. You know, I can't even say, like, nobody can actually say thank you for letting us stay here. You know, like, that's not a thing. So I have to figure out, okay, you know, how do I give back in a way that's going to be like acceptable. So just being able to tell, you know, the stories from a perspective that's not specifically Anishinaabe, because that's not my sort of business, but common knowledge. Yeah. So my personal connection to this particular piece is that on June 21st in 2001, they unveiled this, and I was supposed to be here to unveil it, but my community said, you know, this is my first year away from my community, and they said, I really want you to come back and do a talk on, you know, whatever you want to do, a talk to, like, motivate people and stuff. I was like, okay. I was really young, and I decided to go home, because we grew up in a place where there was a lot of veterans. We grew up in a place where a lot of those veterans, their stories were not told in our community, because there was some shame Some of our people, Métis, came back and they were, they weren't treated very well. They were given not very much money when they left the military, but when they were there, they were some of the best sharpshooters, runners, medicine people, negotiators, code talkers, strategists. I mean, we're good. We're good at stuff, And so when we came back, when our people came back, that's that influx of urban homelessness, of ways of trying to self heal addictions. All of that runs family to family, generation to generation. And when veterans aren't getting that leg up, like the other veterans, to get a house, to get some land, or their own land was given to a veteran, man, that's got to be that's tough. So when I bring people to this monument, I really want to talk about that strength. I really talk about a message that one of the veterans had told me, and he said sometimes in order to achieve peace, you have to initiate war or participate in war. And I had a hard time with that for the longest time, but I bet you can find a lot of examples where that's true, where you don't want a war. Nobody wants to war, I don't think, except for a person in the world. Noel Lloyd Pinet is the artist, and he's from the West. So they put the 4 animals. There's a bear, there's a wolf, there's a caribou, and there's also what's the other animal there? A bison. And so these animals represent strength, resiliency, and bravery. And so we see at the very top is an eagle. So that's to represent leadership, and that's why they have the Suri, help me out with the powwow. The grand entry staff.
That's the word.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I bring lots of people here, and they think it's a candy cane.
Oh my goodness!
They have no idea what a staff.
Yeah. Right? Like you can see it.
Yeah.
I actually really love this sculpture. I think it's a beautiful sculpture, this monument.
So the interesting thing about this entire placement is its relationship to the Lord Elgin, just across the road. Lord Elgin, of course, was one of our Governor Generals to sign off on residential schools. And so we have this enormous hotel, it's beautiful, expensive hotel, but this is the guy, folks. This is the guy who signed off on residential school. He gave royal assent. And so, having our warriors face off with Lord Elgin is just, an incredible opportunity for a teaching tool, because I just don't think folks know,
Yeah. So. Yeah. And I think this is the kind of information that the people who do need to know, this is the way they take it in.
Yes.
And the way that you're offering it is the way that they take it in. So I think there's a lot to be said about being willing to teach in a way that people can hear and receive it, and then realize that it's a direct standoff.
Yeah, and realize that connection, right? So, I often say that I like to teach in university, but some people, they have to take courses they don't always like.
Yeah.
And maybe you're teaching the course they don't really want to take.
Yeah.
And so I found myself in that position when I was teaching in college and university. But when I'm on the tours, I have to find that people really want to be here. So I like teaching people who want to learn.
Yeah,
and that's really interesting.
That's so huge,
for me.
Okay? Being open.
Yeah.
People who are already open to it.
Yeah. So I have a surprise for you at this monument.
Okay.
The last time we were here, I had one understanding of the monument, and that was all based on what I was able to retrieve from any kind of archives or resources. And I came by here last summer, and I saw the grandson of this piece repainting it.
No,
and
like the
look
actual
at him.
grandson.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
And so here he's repainted it. He had to replace the beak a little bit up there.
Okay.
So the beak has been replaced. And they said in a couple years they're going to actually have to replace the base because it's rotting.
Okay. Oh,
And
yeah.
I got to tell you, the story that he told was much less kind of romantic than I read on. I should have known. So let's.
What was his story?
So it's I asked what are these for, and I could never find that answer. So when he was here, I was like what does this all mean? Why is it here? So I knew that according to the government, this is a totem pole. Kwakiutl, or Kwakiwakwak is actually the proper name. The government had commissioned all these carvers to just do like random poles, and they would take one whenever they needed one to like commemorate, this for instance, this is supposed to be a gift from all Indigenous, all Native peoples of British Columbia,
Right.
to say, oh, we're so happy that BC is now, a confederation member of Canada. So no, I don't think all the Indigenous people of BC got together and said, let's give them a gift. They were all commissioned, paid for by the government. Artists got paid, and I was always under the impression that this was a bear, and it is a bear, but it's a sea bear.
To see there.
What? Yeah, this sea bear. I always thought this was a salmon.
Yeah.
Because that's what some of the information on. But he told me that this is it's actually a sea creature. Forgot that.
Okay,
Yeah.
like that's part of. Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's part of it. So I asked him about all those little ones, and he said sometimes the carvers like to put little kind of funny spirit animals in the
to
chest.
put them in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's unlike some totem poles where they're markers for grieving, or they're markers for mortuary poles or family poles or whatever it is. This one is decoration.
It's art. It's
just art.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
So the sea monkey. A sea monkey. Not a sea
Not a
monkey,
sea
guys.
monkey.
Sea monster or creature.
You never
Yeah.
know.
Well, it looks beautiful. It's just like that it's been touched up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was really happy to see him here. And so the artist, I should say, is Henry Hunt, and Henry Hunt is the grandson of another artist from Baseline, which is a really, really tall totem pole for Scouts Canada.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right. So where are we off to?
So the next place we're gonna go is probably to the a really interesting monument, actually, that is really timely. And the timeliness of this comes, with all of the violence from police that we're seeing in the media. And the place I'm going to take you now actually has a statue that I've questioned, the whole time I've been giving these tours. And I noticed that monument actually, it's called the resistance, not the resistance, rebellion. Rebellion monument, yeah. So that one, it reminded me, if I didn't know my own history as an Indigenous person, how as Métis and as First Nations, they sort of, banded together to try to work against getting territory, against, to get land for ourselves. But with the creation of Manitoba and a bunch of, promises to the Métis and First Nations, Louis Riel as a leader, Gabriel Dumont also, it was just basically a way to create the RCMP to keep the Métis and the First Nations down. And the RCMP didn't exist, for any other reason at the time, except for to keep, the law and order amongst First Nations and Métis. And once in a while, they would say to a settler person, yeah, you can't, buy that First Nations land, but that's just mostly they weren't made for us.
Yeah.
And I think that resonates. And with this monument, I like to tell people that there's a history you can't read in this monument if you don't know the history already. And since you're not really getting taught that in school,
Yeah.
You know, it's true, because I didn't learn it. I had to learn it on my own as a full-grown, you know, woman. And so what I did learn about was the Battle of Batoche, was the battle at Duck Lake, the Onion Lake battle. So there was a ton of wars in Canada nobody acknowledges. And a lot of it was just like slaughter, as opposed to, should we walk fast? Or?
Yeah,
Okay, let's go.
Pause. We're pausing. Okay, there's a ton of wars that our country doesn't acknowledge.
Yeah. So there's a ton of wars that our country doesn't acknowledge, and you know, up until like before COVID, you know, what was the war happening there? Wet'suwet'en territory. We had the Oka crisis. I kind of resent the word Oka crisis.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, oh, Oka's having a crisis, but what about the people of Kanesatake?
Yeah, right. It's just like or the whole other
Yeah. So the wording and the language that we use is really important. It matters.
Yeah.
And I don't think we need to go all the way over there, but basically, I can read you that, you know, that plate, and it says that that monument is to recognize the Sharpshooters, 2 of them, who fell during the Northwest Rebellion. So out of all of the First Nations and Métis that they killed and slaughtered, in one case, the RCMP had gone out to a small Métis community while the men were out hunting. So all that was left was elderly women and the children, and they were the ones, you know, left to have whatever guns that the hunters left behind, and they weren't very good guns, and they had no ammunition. So you have little 12-year-old boys shooting at RCMP officers to protect their land, you know. So that's our history. It says nothing about, you know, the people that we lost in those on that text. So you know, we still have a lot of improvement to do, and I like the idea in the United States where they're doing something about the monuments. I'm not necessarily into, my preference isn't to like delete.
Yep.
I think my preference would be to supplement.
Yeah.
And having more balanced text on all of our public monuments wherever we are, I think is what we got to do. You know, we got to make some changes. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So do we have one final stop on our tour today?
I think we could make 2.
Oh, we have 2. Okay.
Yeah. So we have one stop that's coming up, and this one is really funny because I was told to look for this Inukshuk, you know, for my tour, and I looked everywhere around City Hall, and people could say it's there. And so because I had this idea of an Inukshuk, you know, that was like this, you know, the arms and the legs and the hips, and so when everybody thinks of an Inukshuk, I didn't recognize that rock structure over there as, you know, an Inukshuk. So when I finally found out that is actually, you know, a representation of holding space and of guidance, I was like, that's perfect, you know?
Yeah.
So the artist is David Reuben Pictogen, and he's Inuk from the Northwest Territories.
Okay.
And well, 1990 it was still the Northwest Territories, so they called it the Northwest Territories. But it's Nunavut, and he created this piece called The Lost Child. And to make a connection, you know, to residential schools, for instance, the reason that David Reuben Pictogen came down south was for residential schools. And given that this piece was created in 1990, there weren't a whole lot of people talking about residential schools. And this was acquired by the city of Ottawa. And it's just, you know, this place where people can converge. I don't think too many people know about it. I don't even think people even know too much about Inuit residential school experiences. So when he came down, he was feeling, you know, very lonely and disconnected from his community, his language, his land, and he felt a lot like a lost child. You know, he felt that the guidance an Inukshuk usually gives for hunting or for sustenance or even a marker of death sometimes, this is like, this is just like the perfect symbol of guidance.
In the middle of the city.
Yeah, and I had to actually Lakaluk come and do a talk on one of my tours.
Okay.
And it was her that gave some more information about the multiple uses of Inukshuk. So I was really happy to have her here and sort of expand on that. It's always best coming from like the horse's mouth, right?
Yeah.
So when we have guides, I try to get a variety of guides. I try to get people who are, should we go that way? We can go either way. Yeah, let's go this way. Yeah. So I want to have like a bunch of perspectives, right, for the tour. So I encourage the guides to talk about their Cree background or their Anishinaabe background or Mohawk or Métis. Cree, there's Cree from James Bay, Cree from out west. There's a few guides that we've had on the tour, and it's a different tour every time you take it.
Yeah.
Depending on who you're with. Yeah.
So why don't you tell everyone who's watching a little bit more about how they can book a tour, or when you're going to start doing tours again, how they can get a hold of you, because they're watching. Do you have a Facebook? What's up?
Yeah, so Indigenous Walks is shut down for in-person tours right now, but we're looking at doing a package with Aboriginal experiences or Indigenous experiences to sell tours online virtually.
Cool.
And I think it's great for like seniors' homes. I think it's great for Google Classrooms, and just to come in and I'll do the walking for you, and on your off time maybe come bring your family and tell them what you learned on TV. So.
At the end of COVID, you'll have a whole new bunch of tour guides waiting.
It's true. I hope so. Yeah. So, I mean, this has always been an opportunity to educate.
Yeah.
And not every Indigenous person wants to be an educator.
Yeah.
It
sure.
just so happened that, I think I got used to explaining stuff my whole life. I grew up in a non-Indigenous family in an Indigenous community.
Ah, okay.
So I had, access to things and teachings by people who were not my family, but they were my family,
Yeah.
And so I always grew up, I grew up having to explain sometimes to my, community, my family about Indigenous stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
You
they've
became
been
the expert.
pretty supportive.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And have you been jigging on your COVID times? I have to tell the whole
I
audience.
did.
Okay.
I jigged.
Jamie's a wicked jigger.
So actually, that was one of the first times I jigged since I had my baby.
Really? Okay.
And it was hard.
I heard they're doing all kinds of competitions online.
I didn't see those, but
Okay.
I saw them after they did the competition. But it's great. I mean,
So cool, right?
what a way to get into community spirit. And the powwow, the virtual powwow, people were going outside in their regalia.
All of you guys watching, I hope you guys are all doing that. Maybe some of you are competing and you're just taking a break right now to watch this Indigenous walking tour. So if you are, good luck. Good luck in your next
Incorporate
round.
some jigging into your
Yeah,
like those smoke dancers.
Yeah, hold on. Let me see. Do some steps so
Okay.
you can go close up, all right? Yeah. Here's something to practice at home, folks.
You can practice this.
Yes.
Okay, I've done my exercise for the week. Just kidding.
Oh man, I'm happy to hear that you did. That's awesome.
Yeah, we did a Métis kitchen party
Okay.
with the Métis Nation of Ontario. We did a Métis kitchen party with SSIF, the Summer Solstice Indigenous Festival. And we also, coming up, I believe on Tuesday, where, we shouldn't put time in this thing because
Right.
this may not
Coming
be aired
up.
at the same time. Coming up is online workshop for jigging that my children have provided.
Wow, okay.
I haven't seen it, but I'm definitely excited to, and I'm gonna try to follow along.
Okay.
So
The whole family are jiggers. They're very well known. How old are the twins now?
So the twins are 18.
Oh my.
The twins
my
are no longer
goodness.
children; they're women.
For those of you who are watching, all of these things we've talked about, first of all, I'm going to post the episode of Future History that we were mentioning earlier. And also, your twins how old were they when the whole country saw them jigging for Justin Trudeau? What was that?
Oh, for Justin Trudeau, I think they were 12 or something, or
so
13.
you
14.
might remember them because they're really, really cute kids, but they were also twins, and they sort of made all the front page news, so I'll also post that because they're 18
Yeah,
now.
they're 18. Jacob's going to be 17. And then, of course, I have my almost 2-year-old toddler.
Oh my goodness!
So I'm organizing a graduation and a 2-year-old birthday at the same time.
I like it.
Yeah.
COVID times, yeah?
That's it, yeah.
Okay, so this is our last stop?
Yes.
Okay, where are we?
This is our last stop, and usually I put at the beginning because I like that it really shows this sort of, I know we don't all like pan-Aboriginalism.
Yes.
That's not what this is. This is more of a survey.
Okay.
And so that's why I like to bring people here. This monument has quite a history of layered development. So it kind of got put up in some sections, the panels inside. And hey, you know what? I just realized there is another stop right here.
Really?
Right here, yeah.
Okay.
Do we have time for that?
Yeah.
Okay. So before we go inside, folks, I'm going to finish with this one because it's like,
Best. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
so, and this happens on my real life tours sometimes too. So I see this, 1814 Treaty of Ghent Rose Garden. It was put here in 2014.
Wow, okay.
So that's not that long ago.
Mm-mm.
Do you know what the Treaty of Ghent is?
No.
Not many people do. And I didn't know until I actually had a guide that I hired, and she said, hey, do you ever take people here? And I'm like, no.
Wow.
Treaty of Ghent, the 1814 Treaty of Ghent was the signing of where is it? Oh my gosh. So I haven't done this one in a long time, but the War of 1812.
Okay.
So this is the final day that they signed the ending of the War of 1812. Anishinaabe people had thousands and thousands of people in the War of 1812, and in fact, they had like a military that they included here. They were never invited to the signing. They were never invited to the feasts that they had afterward. They were never even really mentioned.
Wow.
And what I want to stress is that this was unveiled in 2014. TRC, I believe, had already
It was already started.
started.
Yeah.
They had like, it was a really good opportunity here.
Mm-hmm.
So now it looks like, we're gonna have to go around and start balancing these things and, fix up some alternative stories here.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the rose garden really needs some filler of some traditional medicine.
That's a great idea. Or roses.
Yeah, or more roses for the rose garden.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's true, yeah.
All
Gonna
right.
set her down. Okay, so now we're gonna ascend up these stairs. Is ascending up?
Yeah.
We're gonna ascend up these stairs and go into, so right outside here, this is called the house, this is the Human Rights Monument, but as soon as we go inside, we're gonna be in the House of Canada.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know why the
Wow.
monument has two different kind of sections. It's kind of neat.
Okay.
I often encounter a lot of people here for lunchtime, when they're on a break. And if I have a group and they kind of listen, so it's nice to, be available that way. But what you're looking at here is 73 different panels of Indigenous languages from east to west to the north to the south, and this isn't even a full comprehensive overview of all the languages. I'll show you the first one in a big panel, which is right here. I bet you can guess what language that is.
Anishinaabe.
That's right. Anishinaabe Moan is the language of the territory here. And so that's why it has like the biggest panels to recognize the land again. English and French, a little bit of Michif up there, number 47.
Nice.
French nouns, Cree verbs. So that's the language of the Métis. All these syllabics on the side, some of them are Anishinaabe or Cree or Inuktitut. Yeah, so this is a great place for me to ask people what they know about, Indigenous titles, people across the world. So, I think that it's just, dignity, rights, is really what the whole point of this place was. And people recently descended here for the huge march that happened.
Wow.
This is where we need to be, you know, this is why this monument was created. Yeah, so the Human Rights Monument is a place where people can come to grieve at the end of a march. They can rally people up and get them excited, and this is, you know, really the direction that we're headed. So I think that more public places the more public spaces that we can have where we can gather 6 feet apart with our masks, you know, this is a huge testament, you know, to rights, equality, dignity. So thanks for joining me, Saray.
Jamie, thank you so much, Jamie. It's been awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And I encourage you, if you're ever in Ottawa, to come and take the tour in real life. But you can watch this over and over again and spruce up on your knowledge, and do the same thing in your own cities. Just figure out where you are in your space and read those monuments. And maybe you know history differently like Jamie did. So that's awesome. It's been so much fun hanging out with you guys. See you later, Social Distance Powwow.
Yeah, see you later.
Summer solstice!
Woohoo!
Summer Solstice Indigenous Festival Virtual Edition. Featuring interactive cooking demos, live and streaming concerts featuring some of Canada's best Indigenous talent, virtual marketplace, online arts and crafts demonstrations, social distancing powwow, and more. Summer Solstice Indigenous Festival Virtual Edition, June 1st to 21st. More at summersolsticefestivals.ca.